This is what hockey looked like a century ago, and here's what it looks like now. So how did we get here? Well, the true genesis of hockey remains a debated topic, with carvings resembling the game dating back to 2000 BC and ice-based variations in the 1500s. The first recorded use of the word hockey is found in a 1773 book depicting children thinking of ways to enhance soccer by incorporating sticks and a smaller ball. But soon the idea evolved and people found it even more enjoyable to play the game on ice. This concept gained popularity, extending to Virginia and beyond. Likely because of their lengthier and colder winters, which provided safer ice, Montreal residents were among the first to take the sport seriously. They must have thought, hey, this game could go places. What if we organized matches and even established some rules? Like, why not? So, even though the game's roots may have different origins, Montreal, Canada, stands out as the focal point in shaping modern ice hockey and is acknowledged as its birthplace. In March 1875, the first organized indoor match took place at Montreal's Victoria skating rink, featuring 2 teams of 9 players each. The game used a wooden disc, and the goalposts were 8 feet apart, and the first game of hockey happened like that. But soon they realized they needed more rules. Not wanting to make things too hard, they just took some rules from field hockey and added one about fighting. And that's how they got a new set of rules. So there were 7 rules, with 6 borrowed from field hockey. The McGill University Hockey Club, the first ice hockey club, started in 1877. By 1880, the number of players on each team was cut from 9 to 7. There were 7 positions: left wing, right wing, center point, cover point, goaltender, and rover. By 1887, 4 Montreal clubs teamed up to create the Amateur Hockey Association of Canada, setting up a planned schedule. Then, in 1892, Lord Stanley donated the Stanley Cup as a symbol for the Canadian Championship. The Stanley Cup was first given to the champion Montreal Hockey Club, and later to league champs or approved teams. In 1897, the Ottawa Capitals challenged for it, but lost 15-2 to the Montreal Victorias. Boston's Matthews Arena, built in 1910, is the oldest indoor ice hockey arena still in use. Northeastern University now uses it for hockey and other sports. It was the first home rink of the Boston Bruins, the oldest US team in the NHL, starting in 1924. The newest Madison Square Garden in New York City, constructed in 1968, is the NHL's oldest continuously operating arena. The National Hockey League, NHL, was established in 1917, taking over from the National Hockey Association, NHA, with 3 former teams: Montreal Canadiens, Montreal Wanderers, and Ottawa Senators, along with a new team in Toronto. So you see now, NHL came about because of a special reason. Eddie Irvingstone, owner of the Toronto Blue Shirts, was disliked by other owners, and they couldn't legally remove him. So since they couldn't kick him out of the NHA, all the other teams left and formed the NHL. Initially meant as a temporary replacement for the NHA, the NHL eventually became the permanent dominant league. In 1921, the NHA's O'Brien Cup became the NHL's championship trophy. Initially, the O'Brien Cup winner challenged the Pacific Coast Hockey and Western Canada Hockey League champions for the Stanley Cup. The NHL expanded into the United States in 1924 with the creation of the Boston Bruins. By 1926, the league had 10 teams in Ontario, Quebec, the Great Lakes region, and the northeastern United States. During this time, the NHL became the only major hockey league, sole competitor, and the biggest rival for the Stanley Cup. In 1947, the Cup was officially designated as the championship trophy of the NHL. Between 1926 and the early 1940s, the NHL's team list changed and eventually shrank. By the early 1940s, the league was down to 6 teams, known as the Original Six. These teams were the Boston Bruins, the New York Rangers, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Detroit Red Wings, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Montreal Canadiens, which is the oldest NHL team. They were the only teams in the league from 1942 to 1967, and 5 of the original 6 teams are the top 5 most valuable NHL clubs. The Rangers at approximately $1.2 billion, the Canadiens at $1.18 billion, the Maple Leafs at $1.15 billion, and the Blackhawks at $925 million. The Boston Bruins are worth $750 million, and the Red Wings are 8th at $600 million. In the original 6 days, the Montreal Canadiens and Toronto Maple Leafs had it good. Teams could only talk to local players within 50 miles of their home ice. This made Toronto and Montreal better at getting new players because they had more local talent. Detroit could pick players from southwestern Ontario, but there weren't as many choices. Most players in the league were Canadians who came up through junior and minor pro leagues. The Chicago Blackhawks tried to get a lot of American players because their owner liked having a patriotic team. The last guy still playing from the original 6 teams was Wayne Cashman, who stopped playing for the Boston Bruins in 1983. Since the original 6 times, 5 of those teams won the Stanley Cup at least once. The Toronto Maple Leafs are the only ones who haven't won again since the league got bigger. The original 6 time ended in 1967 when the NHL added 6 new teams. The old teams became the East Division and the new teams became the West Division. But it wasn't about where they were. It was about making sure an original 6 team got to the finals. They also changed the number of games in a season from 70 to 76 to fit in more teams. In 1970, the NHL got 2 new teams, the Vancouver Canucks and the Buffalo Sabres. The Chicago Blackhawks moved to the West Division, and strangely, the Canucks started in the East. They also increased the number of regular season games to 78 per team. If you're enjoying the videos so far, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Okay, so 2 years later, in 1972, the NHL expanded again, this time to Uniondale, New York with the Islanders and to Atlanta, Georgia with the Flames. The regular season schedule stayed at 78 games per team. In 1972, the NHL faced real competition for the first time in decades with the World Hockey Association, WHA, introducing teams like the Oilers, Jets, and Nordiques. It was like the NHL's annoying little brother who decided to raid its fridge, steal its favorite snacks, or star players in this case, and set up shop in the basement with a neon sign that said, "Eshe, we're cooler than you." Now, for a serious reason, they were a big threat to the NHL because they took away star players who were big names in the NHL, like Gordie Howe and Bobby Hull. Over 60 NHL players joined the WHA for the chance to make more money, and who can blame them? We all look for new opportunities. The WHA had teams in new US and Canadian cities, competing directly with the NHL in some places. The competition between the NHL and WHA was fierce, but facing financial difficulty and unable to meet payrolls, the WHA finally came to an agreement with the NHL in early 1979. So there they were, boom, the WHA and NHL. The first WHA champion was the New England Whalers, who later became the Hartford Whalers when the WHA and NHL merged in 1979. Other WHA teams included the Miami Screaming Eagles, Los Angeles Aces, Chicago Cougars, and New York Raiders. 2 of the original 12 WHA teams moved even before the first season began. The Dayton Arrows became the Houston Arrows, and the San Francisco Sharks became the Quebec Nordiques. The Los Angeles franchise changed its name to the Sharks from the Aces. The Calgary Broncos and the Screaming Eagles folded outright and were replaced by the Philadelphia Blazers and the Cleveland Crusaders. The WHA was exciting, but also unstable. The Houston Aeros got a lot of attention because Gordie Howe came out of retirement to play with his 2 sons, Mark and Marty. Back in the NHL in 1974, the Philadelphia Flyers became the first team after 1967 to win the Stanley Cup. Later that year, the league expanded again, adding the Washington Capitals and the Kansas City Scouts. The schedule then increased to 80 games per team. After 2 seasons, the Scouts moved to Denver and became the Colorado Rockies. They moved again in 1982 to become the New Jersey Devils. The Washington Capitals, however, stayed put and became a regular season powerhouse, although they haven't had much success in the playoffs. The new West Division had the Philadelphia Flyers, Pittsburgh Penguins, St. Louis Blues, Minnesota North Stars, Los Angeles Kings, and California Seals. Even though Chicago and Toronto are in the East, they put them in the West Division to keep an original 6 team in the finals. In 1976, the California Golden Seals moved to Cleveland and became the Barons. The Barons only lasted 2 seasons before merging with the Minnesota North Stars and eventually ending up in Dallas. The World Hockey Association, WHA, struggled financially and had lots of controversies, including player substance abuse, which further tarnished the game's reputation. But it somehow attracted great talent, including Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, and others. In 1979, the WHA folded, and 4 teams joined the NHL: the Edmonton Oilers, Winnipeg Jets, Quebec Nordiques, and New England Whalers. Wayne Gretzky's entry into the scene transformed the game, and he went on to break many records, including setting the record for the most points in a single season. Then came Mario Lemieux as Wayne's biggest rival. Strangely, the rivalry between Lemieux and Gretzky breathed new life into hockey. Their intense on-ice battles, coupled with their exceptional skills, ignited the spark of the game in the audience. Concurrently, the NHL absorbed the remaining WHA teams, reinforcing its status as the Premier Hockey League. The Boston Bruins insisted that the Whalers change their name to the Hartford Whalers, and 2 other WHA teams disbanded. The Nordiques became the Colorado Avalanche, and the Whalers moved to North Carolina, becoming the Hurricanes. The NHL expanded to 21 teams in 1979. In 1979-80, the Atlanta Flames moved to Calgary. The year 1991 brought a tragic moment for the NHL with the sudden death of the great player Mario Lemieux. Despite this heartbreaking loss, a new era dawned with the emergence of stars like Patrick Roy, Jaromir Jagr, and Eric Lindros. The league experienced a surge in popularity, and the familiar 3-period structure became a defining feature of the game. The NHL also mandated helmets for all new players that season. By 1991, the San Jose Sharks joined the league, and the total remained at 21 teams until the addition of Tampa Bay and Ottawa in 1992-93, bringing the total to 24 teams. In 1993-94, the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim and the Florida Panthers joined, and the Minnesota North Stars moved to Dallas. The 1994-95 season was shortened due to a labor dispute. In 1995-96, the Quebec Nordiques moved to Denver, and the Winnipeg Jets became the Phoenix Coyotes. By 1995-96, the NHL had an 82-game schedule, which continues today. In 1997-98, the Hartford Whalers moved to Carolina, becoming the Hurricanes. The Nashville Predators joined in 1998, bringing the league to 27 teams. Wayne Gretzky's last season was 1998-99 with the New York Rangers. The Atlanta Thrashers joined in 1999 and later became the Winnipeg Jets. In 2000, the Columbus Blue Jackets and Minnesota Wild joined, making it 30 teams. In 2003-04, the NHL changed back to having home teams wear dark jerseys, and there were rule changes, including shootouts and reductions in goalie equipment. In the early 2000s, hockey also went through a fashionable change. Players started expressing themselves more with tattoos, chains, and jewelry, adding a new flair to the sport's culture. Teams like the Detroit Red Wings, led by stars like Steve Yzerman and Sergei Fedorov, were super successful and dominated the league. It was a time of both style evolution and powerhouse teams, making hockey even more exciting for fans. But a labor dispute in 2004-05 led to the cancellation of the entire season. The league shut down and players sought alternative opportunities, leaving fans uncertain about the sport's future. However, after a 161-day hiatus, an agreement was reached, opening the door for groundbreaking player contracts and again changing the financial dynamics of the league. In 2005-06, the league returned with rule changes, including shootouts and smaller neutral zones. In 2006-07, the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim shortened their name to the Anaheim Ducks. Before the 2011-12 season, the Atlanta Thrashers moved to Winnipeg to become the new Winnipeg Jets. Typically, the 2010s is what many modern NHL fans grew up on. They might remember that the 2012-13 season was shortened due to another labor dispute that was starting on January 19, 2013. For the first few days of 2013, there was no NHL hockey to speak of as the lockout robbed fans of its joy. But the following 359 days were full of action and tremendous moments that reminded fans why they loved this game so much. Then comes the 2014-15 incredible Winter Classic between the Detroit Red Wings and Toronto Maple Leafs at the Big House, which was also just named the NHL's event of the decade. In June 2016, the NHL made big team news by announcing the addition of a 31st team for the 2017-2018 season. That was the Las Vegas Golden Knights and then Seattle Kraken in 2021. In 2023, the average TV viewership of NHL reached 2.6 million per game in the United States. And as of 2023, there are 32 teams in the NHL. The league has grown a lot when you look back on its history. Hockey has found a home in new places like Columbus, Carolina, and Nashville, where hockey wasn't a big thing before. Yet a looming reality remains. The current stars are aging, with players like Alex Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby, and Ans Kopitar nearing the typical retirement age. As the NHL considers expansion plans and potential rule changes, the league is on the brink of a new era. The end of these iconic players' careers marks the closing chapter of one era and the dawning of a new, unpredictable future for the NHL. Who do you see as the next generation of NHL superstars? Let us know in the comment section.